Okay, I realised people couldn't hear me. I'm so sorry. I had. I was just explaining. I'm very sorry. I haven't been here for a little while now. I've been working on the Toronto Fringe went online this year, and it is an amazing thing that they've been able to do that, because obviously the real Toronto Fringe Festival is not going ahead. And I've been working on a radio play that was going on there, which has taken up the last couple of weeks. It's been absolutely fantastic, but unfortunately I didn't manage to punch a hole to stream in the middle of it. Anyway, I've been using the same setup to do that, because I use my microphone that I use for streaming is also a recording microphone, and of course I left the thing muted because it's been in a bunch of different scenarios I'm not used to having it in. Anyway, I'm with you now. Welcome to Once Upon a Die. Thank you for coming to join me this evening. This is going to be part 3 of our playthrough of 1000-Year-Old Vampire. This is a game, if you haven't seen the last couple of episodes, this is not a complicated game. It's going to be very, very quick to pick up. I did a tutorial when I did part 1. And I'm not going to repeat the tutorial now, but in brief, the deal with this is that I am a vampire, and as a vampire, I am existing in a world that I create as I tell this story, and it's basically a collection of memories. You get prompts, you roll 2 dice, which you can see here. We have a d10 and a d6. You roll them up, you subtract the value on the d6 from the value on the d10, which in this case would be -1, and what that would tell me would be to go backwards 1 prompt in the book. The book has 80 prompts in it. Each prompt has 3 different... or each page has 3 different prompts in it, and if I land on the same page twice, I go to the second prompt, and so on. And that's really kind of it. The details of how we actually create the character are in very, very brief. These memories that you see here, each memory is a part of your vampire's life. You can have up to 5 memories. Each one is made up of up to 3 experiences. You can see here my memory 1 has 3 experiences. And if I need to create a new experience and all of my memories are full, or the experience is unrelated to any of my existing memories, and they are full, then I have to remove a memory. I forget that part of my life. I can put it into a diary if I wish. I can have exactly 1 diary at any given time. I currently do not have a diary because I sold it in the last game. I was forced to, because trading changed. The nature of trading changed as Europe began to trade with the East, and silver and things like that were not particularly valuable anymore, and so we came to trade in fabrics and in silks and spices and in gunpowder. I actually have a black market gunpowder ring, and as a result, because fabric and paper and things like that were more valuable, and my diary was a tapestry, I sold the tapestry as a piece of artwork and managed to keep myself afloat as a result. Anyway, the short thing being, the diary can hold an additional 4 memories. You can't remember extra details from a diary. You can extrapolate from a memory, but if you are trying to remember something as the vampire that is written in your diary, you can only remember it word for word as it is written in the diary. So if you don't write something down at the time, tough. You've forgotten that. It's gone as soon as you put the memory into the diary. We have skills and resources. Skills are things that you can do. Resources are things that you have. They can be stationary. You'll see here I've lost a couple of stationary resources by striking them through. If I'm forced to move country or something like that, I'm not going to be able to keep my country estate, or indeed my home in Mercia, both of which I've had to give up during this game. These are the people we know. They could be immortal, they could be mortal. In my case, I've just written immortal if they are. Anyone who's struck through is dead. These are marks. The things that make me stand out in society is that my left arm is black from wrist to shoulder. It was burned the night that I became a vampire. I don't know the details of how that happened. And my nails have now grown into claws. That happened relatively recently. I've been a vampire at this point for about 500 years. And sometime in the last probably 50, I think. I'm not I'm being a little loosey-goosey. I've said this in each of these videos. I'm playing a little loosey-goosey with the timeline, both in terms of what I remember, because I don't want to spend too long going back on this, and also in terms of what really happened in history. I'm thinking down the line, I'm going to do one of these that probably, this may be it for this. This might be the final part of this playthrough, or there may be one more after this, depending on how our dice rolls turn out. But I'm planning on doing one down the line that'll probably take me 8, 9, 10 videos rather than 3, and I'm really going to research what's going on. If I cross a border in 1256, I'm going to look at a map of 1256 and work out where I am, and do this thing really, really, really seriously. Right now, I'm just kind of doing this for fun. Anyway, oh, sorry, got a couple of notes here. Oh, hi, Jen. Thank you. Oh, yes, not sure if you could hear me. Yes, we established, unfortunately, I screwed up by leaving my mic on mute. Now sorted. And Scott's Case Files says, playing this myself tomorrow night. Looking forward to watching your story tonight. Oh, thank you, Scott. Thank you for coming along and joining. And I saw that you followed me today as well. Thank you. I really appreciate that. I hope that you enjoy what's going on here. Hopefully this all makes sense. I'm guessing you probably know a fair bit about the game if you're playing it tomorrow. Tim, hello! Scott, here's a chance for you to understand anything that I don't explain very well. Ozarkle here in the chat is Tim Hutchings, who designed this game. He was here for my first video. I don't know, Tim, whether you got the chance to watch my second one. It was up on Twitch for a while, but because I was busy for the last couple of weeks, I totally forgot to put it up on YouTube. I posted it this morning so that I could watch it back over myself and remind myself of where things are at. Not all of it. Okay, so I may leave you behind a little bit with some of my story, but hopefully it will all make sense. Anyway, to catch everybody up very, very briefly, and then we'll get going, here is where things are at. So, things that I can remember about my life. I am studying otherworldly creatures. I've made it my life's mission to understand what is going on with this world. I have partly had experiences with them myself, and to a certain extent I know of them through other people. There is an imp called Robert, who is my bête noire. He has fooled around with my life a couple of times. He stole my a set of tools, which actually I don't even remember anymore. That memory has gone. But he's been a real pain, and he just hangs around and pops up every now and then and makes my life miserable. But a woman called Judith, who tells me that she knew me early in my life as Elena, has shown up, and she was actually cursed by a witch, who herself, the witch is immortal, and nobody knows why, because witches aren't inherently immortal, we've discovered. So we don't quite know what's happened there, but she has cursed Judith to be immortal. I don't remember Elena. I have forgotten a long time ago in my life, but Judith has come along, and we are hunkering down together and trying to work out what's going on. I'm worried because I'm turning into a monster. I have been hunted by a group that apparently used to work for me, and I managed to talk them down at least, so that they are now working for me again, covertly speaking, and you'll actually see in my resources, I have servitors of the lineage covert. I lost them for a while, I lost contact with them, and they're now working for me again, but they're doing so undercover because they took my existence to the king. That didn't go so well for me, and they were actually hunting me down themselves using my own research to... And I don't know what is in those books. They are long forgotten to me. But they were using my own research against me to try and hunt me down. Anyway, I've got them working for me again, but now everybody else knows I exist, and that's not so great. My second memory is of the trading. So I basically used I traded away what metal I could once it became valueless, and then used the rest to drink, but I can't get drunk. So that didn't go terribly well. Or maybe it did, I don't know, depends on your outlook. But I now have a black market gunpowder ring. I used to trade it legally, governmentally sanctioned gunpowder, and now I don't. I trade it illegally, and I had an opium operation, but a sailor who used to deliver for me down the canals ratted me out, and I dropped him in it, basically, by planting opium on him, and the opium ring has kind of gone up in smoke. Memory 3 is of Judith. She came to find me. I had fled to Iceland in a house I built myself. And she came over to find me and told me about the witch, and that's kind of what started me going again on my research. I have returned to England, but we were being chased by the ravens that were the spies of Elizabeth, the witch. And with Judith's help, I have begun chronicling these creatures and trying to understand what's out there. And you'll see under my resources, I have the Libris Daemonica, which is the book I am writing, that contains all of this information. Finally, memory number 4 is of Stefan. Stefan is the French nobleman who must have turned me into a vampire. I don't remember it happening. I was very kind of enraptured by him. He was very compelling, very attractive, and I spent some time with him and woke up a vampire, which wasn't great. I have captured one of his henchmen named Etienne, who tried to kill me and Judith with firing flaming arrows at us. And I captured him and heard him say Stefan's name, and I have basically kept him as a prisoner, and I'm trying to interrogate him and trying to understand more French so that I can actually understand what he's saying and work out what's going on. The one thing I have come to understand is that Stefan has taken out a vendetta against me because I am trying to basically reveal the existence of all these species. I'm not particularly trying to reveal them, per se, but that's what he's decided I'm doing. Normally, we would have a 5th memory, but in the last part of my game, in the last sort of half hour or so of gaming before I finished my 2nd batch, I lost a memory slot, which is very inconvenient. So I now only have 4 memories. I also realised this is all hard to see with my layout. So what I'm actually going to do, I think, is I'm going to bring myself down here and my dice tray here, and we'll deal with the top half for text. That, I think, is better. What does Jen say? I'm partway through my own playthrough. The planner in me keeps trying to plan ahead, and then the game laughs and goes, nope, you're doing this now. Very true. I haven't tried to do a lot of forward planning in this, but there have been a couple of points where I've thought, oh, it'll be fun if I can make this happen. Haven't made it happen. And Scott says 1 less memory slot. That's huge. The actual horror. Yeah, it was a big one, and trying to decide what to kill. I think it was in the same... It was either in the same encounter or the one before it. I actually forgot. I completely forgot, as in can never recover, my very first name. My oldest existing name, which happened to be my first name. I have changed my name 3 times. I do not remember, but for the sake of the file, I'm referring to this so also I don't spoil it for people who watch this on YouTube later. It's the Walter file, which in a meta moment, out of the game, I was originally Walter. Back in the game, my oldest name that I can remember is Thomas. I became Thomas when I fled my home village after something happened. I don't remember what it was anymore. Then I fled to Iceland and became... I fled further from there and became Edric, and then I fled to Iceland, and the Northmen in Iceland could not pronounce my name properly, and I became Eric. And that's where we're at. That's basically everything that has happened up until now. We were, at last play, on prompt number 60, and we are going to move on from there. So what happened in 60, I checked a skill to avoid arrest as a criminal. I actually don't remember what skill I checked for that purpose. I think it was knowing how to diversify the goods I invest in, and that is how Matthew, who is the sailor who transported opium for me, got arrested, because I created him. And I planted opium on him to get him arrested. I could have had Etienne arrested, I guess, but he may still know something, and I'm not letting that happen just yet. With that borne in mind, let us proceed. For anyone who hasn't watched one of my streams before, general rule for me is when I roll the dice, if they do not land in the dice tray, they don't count. That way you guys can always see my rolls. And I'm going to take a second to say, if you are watching me right now and you have not followed my Twitch channel, please do. I am all about solo gaming, mostly with a storytelling bent, or a story-heavy game, and sometimes more puzzly stuff. I have traditionally done board games. I am now doing RPGs as well, because I found this amazing solo RPG that I love, and it's proving to be really good fun, and I've gone hunting for more. I think I found a couple, but we'll see. Anyway, on we go. So we have 0 minus, or 10, because a d10, minus 2, so we are going from prompt 60 to 68. So this may finish sooner than I was expecting if we keep going that far. So prompt 68 says, an antiquity has surfaced which is directly tied to your mortal life. Check a skill or lose a resource and gain the antiquity as a resource. Then regain one of your earliest memories. Record an experience about acquiring the antique. Interesting. Not where I saw anything going. This is intriguing. Tim says, Princess with a Cursed Sword is a solo game I recommend. Excellent. I am actually going to send myself an email right now to look that up. Forgive me from doing this on stream. I probably shouldn't, but I've got Evernote open. Never mind. I'm here now. I could have just written that in an Evernote, but no, Tim, please. I appreciate the interruption. I'm really, really keen to look for more solo RPGs because I'd love to blend up just board gaming with other things. Browless Wonder, hello. You came in late. What's the structure vibe of this game? I'll keep it brief because I've just done the explanation part of this, but super briefly, this is a solo RPG where I'm a vampire. I roll 2 dice, take away the d6 from the d10. That tells me how far to advance or move backwards in the book of prompts, and I make up a story based upon the prompt that I come up with. That's the rough idea of it. This is part 3 of my campaign, so you're coming in a little further down the line with this one. But hopefully everything will make sense, because it's really all storytelling, and there's the mechanics in this are nice and simple, and probably something you'll pick up just by watching. Anyway, so what's just happened? An antiquity has surfaced directly tied to your mortal life. Check a skill or lose a resource, and gain the antiquity as a resource, then regain one of your earliest memories. Record an experience about... Okay, actually, this is one of those moments where I'm so glad Tim is in chat. Tim, a question for you. Regain one of your earliest memories. Does that mean I take one of my earliest memories and replace one that I currently have? Because I don't have an open memory slot right now, and I've lost one. Like, I'm down to 4 memory slots. Do I replace one of my existing memories with the old memory, or do I kind of gain it as a bonus? Or is that open to interpretation? Tim says I meet it with a vague shrug. I think it's a bonus. Okay, that makes sense. You know what I'm actually going to do? I'm going to meet your vague shrug with a sort of having an idea. What I'm going to say is I'm going to actually regain it, and I'm going to put it straight into a diary. Because I think I have lost my diary because I sold it, so I may as well start another one. The question is, what memory do I want back? And what is going to give me an antiquity? Interesting. An antiquity has surfaced. I mean, Robert could bring my tools back. That could be minorly interesting, but I don't think that's quite what we're going for here. To anyone who missed my initial explanation of this, Robert is an imp who is a pain in my backside. And metaing out of game character for a moment, he stole my tools a long time ago. I've actually forgotten that. That isn't in my life anymore. But that was my reference. Regain an early... Okay, so I guess I can do it in character because I'm still looking for what memory to bring back. Skills across... Okay, so this memory's about my father having taught me well and using it to build canals. I don't think that's really relevant. Northmen coming to England. Right, Robert dobbed me in and that's what made me flee to Iceland, because he is a real pest. 4 years after my first... Okay, so there's Robert. That's Francis. That's that. Okay, so that actually the tools is probably one of the more relevant things. Let's just have a look at what would be tied to my mortal life. Resources I've lost. My mason's tools, my knapsack, the French... Oh, the French book! That could be interesting. So the French book I'm not going to get my diary back. I sold that. I'm not fussed. And I don't think an antiquity is my old country estate. Besides which, that has been ransacked because the hunt that my savants led against me generations down the line, they used my research against them, which means they actually turned all of those books in to the monarchy, which means that estate is fundamentally useless to me. I think the two things it would be most interesting to bring back would either be my tools as a reminder of who I was, because I certainly don't remember, or the French book. The French book was given to me by a priest when I was very young who saw my skill as a mason and said, hey, if you read this when you learn how to, it will help. And I'd never learned to read French. But I have started to learn French through interrogating Etienne. The mason's tools, on the other hand, are who I was. I was a mason, and they were stolen by Robert. And he is immortal, so he is definitely still around. I don't think he's careless enough to leave them behind. Or maybe... No, he's going to do that just to screw with me. I think that's what's happened. I think... So I gained the antiquity as a resource. So the mason's tools come back. They are now an antique relic. I have to check a skill or lose a resource in order to do this. The only skill I have left right now is I don't need maps to travel the canals of England. I added of England to that, by the way, between my last playthrough and this one, because I realised if I'm ever anywhere else, I'm not going to have that knowledge. Or lose a resource, which is either my book, my gunpowder ring, my servitors. Yeah, those are the only three things. I think it's going to be this, actually. I'm going to lose that skill. I don't need maps to travel the canals of England. Regain an earliest memory. So, I've checked a skill. I don't need to lose a resource, because it was one or the other. I have gained the antiquity as a resource. Then I regain an earliest memory and record an experience about inquiring the antique. Okay, so... Regain one of my earliest memories. This is going to remind me who I am. Because I just got my tools back. Which, in many ways, were part of my identity. So, my memory, and I realise you guys probably aren't going to see this properly. Sorry. This is a really tricky, having Evernote in the background, I should probably share less of the screen. It's just tricky to kind of get it all in. But this says, I'm Walter, next in a long line of stonemasons. I was born in Wessex, England, in 1032. I have little to my name but my tools and skill. That was the very first experience I recorded when I built this character. One night I awoke to a bony finger on my lips. The creature before me was no bigger than a turkey, but wiry, ghastly to look upon, and extremely quick. It mouthed to me, I know what you are, and fled through the window, smashing a pot and stealing my tools. I chased it, but to no avail. That was Robert the Imp. Despite having no tools, I built myself a moderate accommodation on the mysterious island that I discovered the locals called Iceland. My craft served me well, and I was able to borrow tools from the villagers, of less quality than my own, but sufficient. It was a task I set myself for 2 full years. I would make a home for myself on this island, no matter how temporary it might end up being. Once complete, I realised that I required time not only for thinking, but to give the situation in my homeland time to settle, in the hopes I might return there. I slept the deep sleep of the undying, and dreamed not once in the century I remained in darkness. So there's 3 very, very disparate parts of my life there. My very first beginning as a human, remembering that I am Walter, a stonemason. Robert the Imp stealing my tools, which happened about 2/3 of the way through my first part of this. And then building my own house in Iceland, which happened about halfway through the second part. So that's quite a chunk of life to remember. But it comes with my very earliest memory. Which is a very intriguing thing to suddenly come back. However, I still have to create an experience. So, this memory is full, memory 4, and is all about the vampire who turned me. This memory is full, and is all about Judith telling me that witches exist. This memory is not full, and is about me trading on the black market. Now, that could actually be a relevant use of this. And then this memory is full, and is about me and my monstrous nature and being hunted. Okay, interesting. Oh, I'm actually just going to very quickly put into resources, diary. I'm labeling my diaries here because it helps me to keep track of the fact that I have them in case somewhere down the line I end up forgetting them or losing them. So this diary, my last diary was a tapestry with images drawn on it. I think I'm going to go for something smaller because that was a heck of a thing to have to carry around with me. This diary is going to be... this is actually just going to be a book. This is going to be a completely normal book. I've got used to writing now because I'm writing the Libris Demonica. Richly bound book secured with 3 small durable locks. Okay, I have a diary. Now, so this memory number 2, I think this is where this experience is going to go. The first part of this is how metal became useless, because fundamentally Europe began trading with the East, so spices and silks and gunpowder became tradable resources. And then my black market situation, having a black market opium ring that went up in smoke, so I now have a black market gunpowder ring. I am going to say here, while traveling the canals, ensuring that my network remained secure, functional, and profitable, I kept my eyes out for anything that would further my research. Many times I heard... Ooh, I cannot type today. I heard of churches claiming to have religious artifacts or to have destroyed demons and other occult creatures. Many of these occurrences were... That's an E. Try again, David. Many of these occurrences were charlatanism intended to further the profile of the church or diocese in question, but some were legitimate. The clergy had even begun excavation work, trying to uncover relics or source items of power or historical significance. While visiting a church in the kingdom of, let's say we're back in Wessex, I came across a collection of items yet to be identified. Amongst them was a small mason's belt with ancient-looking tools. A distant memory resurfaced, and I reached out and touched them. To my astonishment, memories flashed back of a life I had not recalled for centuries. I knew instinctively that the tools had been mine, and I quietly took them from the church. when I returned to my sanctuary, I mounted them and placed them behind. Or placed them inside a locked cabinet on the wall of my study. Well, there we go. One thing I am going to change in the diary, because I genuinely forgot my old name, is I am going to strike out the name here. I had an interesting experience in the last game, actually, where I was actually instructed to strike 3 nouns out of a memory. I'm trying to remember if I still have that memory or if I've since forgotten it. I think I've since forgotten it. But I'm going to choose to strike out the name because I had to forget my oldest extant name, and I don't think I would still have reason to recall it. So, there we go. I have my tools back. They're fundamentally non-functional at this point because they've been underground for probably 300 years. But there we have it. An unexpected and entertaining development. Goodness knows why Robert did that, because assumedly it was him. Alright, 3 minus 1 is 2, so we go on to 70. So this says, mortals are cruel and work in ways outside your understanding. How were you mocked or victimized? Why was your response ineffectual and costly? Check a skill. Interesting. I mean, mortals are cruel, that's not wrong. The fascinating thing here is I don't have a skill. They've all been checked. Now, if you can't check a skill, you lose a resource instead. So that's what I have to do. How was I mocked or victimized? Why was your response ineffectual and costly? So what have I got? I've got my people. I've got the tools I just got back. It's got to be the gunpowder ring. That's the thing. It's the only thing that's keeping me afloat right now. It seems logical that that's the thing that would go pop. Because the diary... I don't really see how somebody would victimize me for a diary specifically, and I am keeping that thing very carefully guarded after I sold the last one. This thing is probably my prized possession, the Libris Demonica. I'm not letting anyone near that. I don't think those two things are touchable by mortals. The servitors could be. They could be interesting too. The Mason's tools, no, irrelevant. They don't mean anything to anyone except me. That could be reason enough to do a thing. Oh, yes, Tim says you lose a resource instead and it has to go badly. Yeah, that's a fair point, actually. Yeah, this is not going to be a positive outcome because I can't do the thing that was required, so what I do has to be worse. Which actually changes my mind. I'm going to lose the Servitors of the Lineage. Again. This is actually... The Servitors of the Lineage, that was a resource that was given to me by the game. It is a prompt to actually take that specific wording. I turned it into the people who are... It's a family who basically exists to serve me. Willingly so, mostly. And they were helping me in my research. I struck them out previously because I hadn't spoken to them for 250 years and I was hiding on Iceland. So I struck them out on the grounds that they weren't in contact anymore. I brought them back with Gareth when he led the witch hunt against me, and then I discovered who they really were by interrogating him, because I'd forgotten by that point. I'm now going to strike them out again. So, this, I think, at this point in time, has to be a new memory, because they're all full. So, I'm going to lose... this one, I think. I have forgotten that I was hunted down by one of my people. I'm just going to dump that down here quickly into a new memory. Okay, so memory number 1. I don't know how it happened. It was possible that Etienne had somehow got word out through one of the less loyal of my people, or perhaps another of my legends had caught up with me. I truly had no idea. I only knew something had gone wrong. Oops. When I passed into the town of Bath and found a warning written on the wall. It said, cannot type tonight. It said, Eric, you are unwelcome in this life. Be gone, demon. The words were written in the blood of the man who was staked to the wall beneath them. His entrails hanging from his broken body, and his face stuck in an unholy mask of pain. It was Gareth. He was the first of many, and I began to realize that my very existence in England was threatened. I broke up the servitors that remained, sending them on their way and telling them to lay as low as they could. I don't know if any survived, but I know that more than half were brutally murdered and made an example of. I did my best, but it was not enough. Too many had died, and I was forced to abandon not only the survivors to their fate, but my home, the majority of my research, and all of my possessions, bar those few I could fit into a carriage along with Judith. We fled to Europe. Well, that did not go particularly well. I'm going to strike out the gunpowder ring as well. I don't have to do that. The prompt didn't tell me to, but it seems appropriate to the story that I lose more than one thing at this point. The diary and the demonica would have come with me. And I think the tools would have been something that I deemed important enough to get out because they were a connection to something so strange in me. And research is my function, almost. That did not go particularly well. Things are starting to break down. Yikes. Yeah. Let's see what goes on. 4 minus 2, so we go 2 forwards to 72. I said this could be a shorter session. You are caught outside and destroyed. What happened? The game is over. Oops. Well, let's find out, shall we? Well, I guess I'm not going to record an experience of my own destruction, so let's just unpack this. Fleeing has been half of my life. I fled from Wessex to Mercia, to Essex, to Iceland, back to England again, and now I'm forced to flee once more, and this time I'm forced to flee the country not because of convenience. I actually ended up in Iceland just trying to get to Scotland, and I was blown off course. I'm actually forced from the country for my own survival. And I think the problem that has arisen with that is very fundamentally that I had been hiding all this time from Elizabeth. And one thing that Judith had said was that the further away from Elizabeth was the thing that she was trying to see, the harder it was for her to see it. Hence, she needed 150 ravens in Iceland just to be able to see Judith and myself. Judith specifically, but then myself as well for hiding her. And perhaps my biggest mistake was fleeing with Judith. Because she was still a target, clearly. Elizabeth was not going to give up that easily. And I don't think I'll ever know exactly what happened, but she found us. And I realized at the point where we met her on the road in France. We were on the Normandy coast, just moving along the coast to try and slowly begin to head southwest and maybe go to Spain. And she found us. We ran into her on the road, and I recognized her, and I realized that she had actually been on board the boat that had carried us across from England. She'd been following us. I don't know what caused her to think of me as that much of a peril, but obviously something triggered her to want me to not exist anymore. Maybe she was just trying to get me away from Judith. I don't know. Destroying a vampire is not easy. It is not easy at all. I had tried to research it so that I knew what to guard against, and I couldn't find a way. Or at least I couldn't find a way without potentially testing it on myself, and I wasn't quite ready to do that. Elizabeth, however, did. She knew exactly how to destroy a vampire. And the thing that I had never considered, and it seems so illogical in my afterlife thought process, was that mystery of the blackened arm. Because it was the only thing that I noticed a difference in, other than the hunger that grew on me after some time. It didn't really take hold, as my vague recollection has it, for 2.5 weeks, 3 weeks before I really got hungry. But from day one, I had the blackened arm. And that, strangely, was the secret behind the whole thing, because within the arm, the reason that arm had been blackened was that it was the representation of the soul of the being that had created me. In order to create a vampire, you put a part of yourself into the being that you are changing. A part of your spirit is the wrong word. That implies some kind of a positivity, a part of your essence into the other person. And it was the representation of the blackened arm. And while I hid that arm for so many years, it occurred to me in my very final moment that it had never been truly damaged. And in fact, Elizabeth destroyed it completely. She used her magic to set it on fire, but not normal fire. Normal fire doesn't burn red. We're talking crimson. What that fire was, I don't know. I never saw it at any point in my existence. It was never in any of my research. No idea what it was, but it destroyed that arm. And that was a weakness I had never known. Perhaps because I had never been able to understand the person who made me a vampire, because I didn't speak his language. But the loss of that arm, the complete obliteration of it, and this is bearing in mind, I got in a lot of fights, and it had never really been wounded, so I think it took that mystical witch fire to actually destroy it. With that, I lost the strength to fight, and it took time. It wasn't an easy thing for her to destroy me. But I couldn't fight back anymore. I had lost... It was like the 900 years I had lived caught up with me all at once. I felt old. I felt decrepit. I felt like I wasn't able to continue to be. And she destroyed me. And exist I no more. And that is the end of Eric Edric Thomas Walter, the vampire. And the end of the game. And that's that. That was interesting and not at all where I expected it to go. Oh, we have comments. What are people saying? Oh, so soon. Yeah, that did come on slightly more suddenly. Rolling that 8, jumping 8 sections ahead. I was hoping we'd go back a couple, actually. I had a fear that we might lose then. Tim says she desired the book. Oh, the Libris Demonica! Of course she did! Well, that makes complete sense. She'll write the final chapter in the book, and the final chapter in the book will be how to destroy a vampire. Yeah. Yeah. I can see that. I have just allowed a very, very powerful weapon into the hands of somebody who can actually do something with it and wants to, as opposed to me, who is the hands of somebody who could do something with it and didn't particularly want to. Oh. Well, that's a dark thought that may have to be explored in a future game. I actually really like the idea of making my next playthrough begin in this universe. I like that logic that this research is being... Maybe I'll play Stefan. No, I don't think so. But maybe I'll play another vampire in this world who hears of what's gone on, and maybe, I don't know, we'll see. But it would interest me to carry on this lore. I got really into the lore of this world in a very strange way, and I think I wasn't expecting that to be my point of intrigue. But it would also be interesting to play a character who lives with that lore now established, but who does not live with the kind of, I guess, what would he be? True neutral, maybe? No, he's not true neutral. But I think he's neutral. Is he neutral good? Maybe. He's one of those two. I think it would be interesting to play a vampire who was, chaotic neutral or chaotic evil or something, and play somebody on the other end of the psychology spectrum who's a bit more about the action and the blood and gore and all that sort of thing, and dominating mankind and seeing exactly what happens to him, which is kind of your more traditional thing, which is why I bucked it for this. I wanted to go with something different. But yeah, Scott says, I missed part 1, but even this small snippet was done amazingly well. You are an impressive storyteller, sir. Thank you, Scott. That's extremely kind of you. Parts 1 and 2 are on YouTube. If you head over to YouTube and search for Once Upon a Die or D.A. Xavier, you'll find my little top hat logo there, and parts 1 and 2 have been uploaded onto YouTube. This part will also go up there in a bit, and it will go up with the into my playlist. I've created a playlist for 1,000-Year-Old Vampire. So yes, you can see those there if you would care to. Yes, thank you all for coming along and joining me on this rather extraordinary adventure. It finished rather abruptly. I was hoping to go a couple more prompts. This is quite extraordinary. If you haven't been here for the whole thing, I truly encourage you to look back at the other 2 videos. Regardless of my storytelling, this is just such a unique game for me. I haven't done a lot of role-playing. That's something I said at the beginning of my first video. I've actually never played a game of Dungeons & Dragons. I've played a couple of one-shots in my time, but I've never done a run-through like this from beginning to end of something that takes more than one sitting. And it was such a delight to dig into this, and the way that Tim has designed this, and Tim, if you're still here, I hope, thank you again for putting this game together. It's such an interesting way of creating a story. It's such a interesting way of playing a game. That concept of you can really begin to set stuff up, and I got ideas, and Jen said the same thing. I got ideas while I was doing this, and I was like, I would love to make something out of this. I'd love to have got to the bottom of what all of this meant, and who Stefan was, and what that French book was all about. And I kept getting curveballs thrown in my way by the game, and it didn't let me go and do that. And number one rule of an author when you're writing a book: what do you do with your protagonist? You put them up a tree, you throw rocks at them, and set the tree on fire. You make their life as difficult as you possibly can. And what was so great with this was I had direction. I had objectives, I had goals, I had things that I felt like I wanted to achieve with where the character was going. And the game threw rocks at me, put me up a tree and set the tree on fire. And then chased the tree out of England. And it was such a great thing to have that ability to be kind of pushed around. And yet still feel like I was in control of the story. So thank you, sir, for a fabulous experience. And I look forward to playing this one again, which I will do. I'm gonna look up a couple more solo RPGs and kind of move things up a bit. I need to do some more board gaming too, because I've been a bit less regular than I'd like to be with my streaming. But I am definitely going to do another playthrough of this, and I think it's going to be something that's even more involved than this one was. I think it'll be researched. I think it'll be really dug through. I've got lots of comments. I'm just going to look through those before I sign off for the evening. So what have we got here? The next TYOV playthrough, 1,000-Year-Old Vampire, The Legacy of Eric. Quite. Might be. I don't think I'm going to do someone who's related to him. I think I'd like to do something that's tangential, but I think it could tie in very nicely. Scott says, how many prompts total was that? That's a good question. I didn't count. We went backwards a couple of times. We landed on the same prompt twice a couple of times. 25? Maybe 30? Something in that region. I'm not 100% certain. I was moving at the beginning of the game, I was moving forward kind of 3s and 4s at a time, then I'd go back to and carry on a little bit. I didn't have a big jump like I did tonight, which is why I wasn't expecting this to end quite so fast. Going forward, 8 was I think 5 was the biggest jump I'd done to date, maybe a 7. But yeah, I think something in the region of about 25. Tim says he's trying to find a heart emoji. Bless you, Tim. Thank you. And thank you, Redheaded Coffee Shop Girl, for providing one. Jen says, in my own playthrough, I've been learning how to not plan ahead and just go with it. Yeah, you kind of have to. I think it's nice to have the goals there. I'm liking that. I like that sense of I know where I want to go. But that's not where I'm necessarily going to get. It's kind of like the actor's ideal challenge, where something that's being given back to you, you can still see the goal, but you can never quite get there. Tim says, I'd love to see someone use the additional prompts from the appendices. Yes, I really want to do that the next time I play this, because I want to expand this out. So I'm just going to go back to OBS and expand this just for a moment. This is oh, hang on, let me just zoom out a fraction too. So here's what I've been looking at. We've got these 3 prompts per page of the book. I just have the print and play right now. I've been using the iPad, but will be buying the hardback book. Tim has a beautiful hardback copy of this that you can get as well, which I'm going to get. But if I go down a little bit further, I can't remember how far through these are. Right, here we go. There are appendices, and the appendices have a whackload more prompts. Alternate prompts in Appendix 1, and I can't remember how many it is. Is it another 80? Or tons more? There's alternate starting prompts as well. So there's 39 prompts here that I'm guessing, Tim, maybe you wrote those. And then there's more that it looks like other people have contributed as well. I've got here additional prompts by Jesse Rainbow. So there's a chunk in here. And there's an enormous number of prompts that you can actually add. So there's 80 in the original game that have 3 levels each. So there's 240 prompts in the base game. Now, if you never roll back on yourself, like you don't roll... So if I rolled, a 2 and a 2, that's a 0. I'm not moving in the book. I'm doing the same prompt again, and I go down 1 on the page. Or if I rolled... I don't know, a 3 and a 2, and I went back 1, and I went to a prompt I'd already done, I go down on the page. So you don't repeat a prompt, you go to the next one down. But once you've done all of that, it looks like, I'm still going, there's over 90 of these. So there's a massive pile of additional prompts in this book. It's huge! You could create such a colossal thing. Tim says 3 other sets of contributors. That is extraordinary. I mean, that's a huge amount of content. I very much look forward to digging into all of that. I'm just going to bring myself up for the last couple of minutes. But there we go. 1,000-Year-Old Vampire. If you haven't come across it yet and you're enjoying what you've seen here, please go and check out my other YouTube videos so you can see a little bit more of the play and understand exactly what's going on here. But also look at Tim's website and buy a copy. He has the print and play, which is what I've got here. He has the hardback book, which is a gorgeous thing. And if you really want to commit, you can even write in the book and make that your official, big playthrough or something. But it's a thing of beauty. And this game is truly fabulous. Oh, last couple of comments I realised as well. Tim says, I was scanning a photo album for my next game while listening tonight. It took exactly as long as your game session. Well, I'm glad I kept you entertained while you were doing that, Tim. Jen says, keen to play the multiplayer option when the world gets back to normal. Yeah, I'm kind of really intrigued by that as well. It's an interesting concept to do this multiplayer and to have that interaction. I would like to do that. Tim says no one's written in a book yet that I know of. Yeah, I know. Part of me thinks that writing in a book is sacrilege, to be honest. But at the same time, there's something so cool about... I'm really into legacy games right now. In board gaming, Charterstone, Pandemic Legacy, that kind of thing. And the idea of having like your permanent campaign is kind of... I mean, I guess every campaign of this is kind of permanent, but something about creating the diary as you go is intriguing. But then I guess it would be a half-empty book. So, yeah, I probably wouldn't do it, but... the sort of the part of me that loves not being able to go back on a story is kind of intrigued. Anyway, a couple of recommendations, if I may. I've already talked about 1,000-Year-Old Vampire itself, and I cannot recommend that enough. A couple of channels I would recommend that you follow that are friends of mine here on Twitch. Moyle's Meticulous Meeples Moyle's Meticulous Minis is a fantastic channel. That Scott Moyle does a bunch of miniature painting, and he goes on for 5 hours at a time. I think it's about 4 times a week maybe. And he's an extraordinary miniature painter and also a very entertaining person to host a channel. And his is fantastic. I did, at one point in time, have Nightbot set up. Yes, there we go. I can actually get Nightbot to prompt his channel into the chat for those of you who are watching right now. If you're watching this on YouTube later on down the line, just head over to Twitch and look up Moyle's Meticulous Minis, and you can follow him. And also into the Meepleverse, my friend Billy, he and my friends, I should say, Billy and Maggie. I think Billy's running the channel mostly at the moment, but I work with them at Snakes and Lattes in Toronto, and they now run a podcast and Twitch stream on board gaming. I know he was actually streaming Star Wars Imperial Assault tonight, possibly? No, I think he's done with that. I can't remember what he was going to be streaming tonight. Why did that not... My Nightbot didn't tag. Anyway, it's just twitch.tv/into the Meepleverse. There we go. He was doing a run-through of Halo Reach recently. He completed an Imperial Assault campaign, and he does a bunch of board gaming. So he's another cool guy to follow if you're doing that. For me, I am primarily about solo gaming. That's kind of my shtick. Specifically games that have a story-heavy content. I love story in games. It's a wonderful escapism for me, and I really, really enjoy those elements. So that's my focus. I do solo Euro games and puzzle games as well, but anything that has a story to it is my sort of primary thing. I do board games on this channel. This is obviously an RPG video. I will be back to board games again for my next one, which will hopefully be later on this week. And they're all solitaire. They're not necessarily one player only. They might be games that have a solitaire option to them. Any of the cooperative games out there, for the most part, with a couple of exceptions, for example, you just play 2 characters and you can play them by yourself. I'm not certain what my next game is going to be, but I've done things like Coffee Roaster, Nemo's War, Railroad Inc. What else have I done? I've done some really cool stuff. Thunderbirds, Matt Leacock's Thunderbirds game. A bunch of really, really cool games. All of them are uploaded onto YouTube, with the exception of Coffee Roaster, which is actually private right now, just while I add the Klingon subtitles that contain my screw-ups, where I note them and say, hey, don't do this. And that's what I do. I also have a podcast called Once Upon a Die, and that is currently on hiatus. I'm hoping to bring it back before too long. But if you haven't checked that out, please do. Looks at solo games as well, but it also has radio plays based on playthroughs of thematic games. Because in case you hadn't guessed it from what I'm doing right now with this video, I like storytelling. So I play a game through once, I record all of my thought processes that go through my mind while I'm playing it, and I turn the key points into a radio play and have it fully voice acted by some of my friends. And it's been a lot of fun, and I want to bring it back soon, and I would love if you check it out and leave a review on iTunes or something like that if you would so choose. In the meantime, if you are watching me right now on Twitch, please go to YouTube, look up D.A. Xavier or Once Upon a Die, and subscribe to me there. If you're watching me on Twitch or YouTube and you have not followed me on Twitch yet, please do so. I would love that. And please look up Once Upon a Die on wherever you get your podcasts and have a listen to that as well. I would love that too. Very lastly, if you would like to, you could go to my Patreon. It is patreon.com/Once Upon a Die, believe it or not. Up here, and I hope I'm pointing in the right direction. I'm getting used to this. I have to point the opposite direction to the way I want to. That's my link tree. And my link tree contains all of those links as well. In the meantime, I'm going to call this episode done for tonight. Thank you very much for joining me. Tim, thank you so much for coming and watching another of my playthroughs of your fantastic game. It's really great having you in my audience. Thank you very much indeed. Good luck for your own... you said you were going to do a live stream of your own at some point. Has that happened yet, or should I promote it right now if it's coming up? I can't remember exactly when you said that was happening. And also Scott's Case Files, who is in chat right now. He is also going to be doing a stream of this tomorrow on his channel. Scott, I will follow you. I don't know if I will be able to watch it tomorrow, but I will certainly try and catch it later on down the line. I would love to see what happens with your story. And yeah, go and check out Scott's Case Files if you would like to watch another playthrough of this, and I will let you know on this channel and on my social media when Tim is going to be doing his playthrough. Tim is Ozarkle in the chat. If you hadn't gathered that, please do follow him as well. And yeah, you guys have a fantastic time with your games. I can't wait to watch them and see what happens, because this is cool. I'm going to call it for the evening. Thank you all very much once again. It has been a pleasure having you along on this wild ride of 1000-Year-Old Vampire. And I hope to see you for whatever board game I drum up later on this week. Thank you very much. Stay safe, have a good night, and keep rolling those dice until the game is done. Take care.